Wasn't it so much fun to like watch a bunch of movies in a rushed fashion? The fact that you hear the stories about the Oscar voters not actually watching all the films, even like it is literally like put in front of you. You literally get paid to like fucking fly out to a Netflix studio and have brunch with Guillermo del Toro, and you won't just fucking sit down and watch even just the nominations. Just like
I don't
that's your one
know.
fucking job.
I don't know that I'd want to have lunch with Guillermo del Toro.
Mm.
I don't know why. He just puts me off. Like,
Oh,
I really liked Pan's Labyrinth, but
but
uh, the Fishman movie that he did that everybody
yes,
loves so
Shape of
much.
Water.
I hate that movie. I hate that fucking movie. I hate it so much.
Oh, I haven't watched it, so should I watch it so we can hate it together?
Sure, I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are. I saw it in the theater, and everyone else that I was there with, I
Loved
went
it.
with a group of people. They all thought it was great, and I was like, "Did we see the same movie?"
Can you say why you hated it without spoiling too much?
It's just there are zero surprises in it. It is exact. It does exactly what you expect it to do,
Creature fall in love beat for beat.
and it does it in a very Guillermo del Toro way. And the bad guys are ridiculous. Everybody's a caricature of themselves, and um, yeah. I also never really cared for his Hellboy movies either, and those were really celebrated as like high art. I don't. I never saw it. Never
Mm-hmm.
saw that appeal. Um, After Pan's Labyrinth, I haven't really connected with anything.
Guillermo del Toro canceled, destroyed. Stop this immediately.
Yeah, I don't. I think that an Oscar voter has no. What gives them the right?
They paid to be part of the industry.
Well, I mean, to not actually watch these films. I don't know.
Lazy motherfuckers.
I guess that's how you get rich. That is the great grift, right? Is all of the rich people tell you that if you just work harder, you will be successful. When in reality, all of the laziest people are the wealthiest. It's because they all inherited all that wealth. Woo!
Woo!
Welcome to Meaning What. I'm Mason Hershenow,
I'm Shawning.
and we are here to talk about some movies with Lincoln screaming in the background.
Well, there's the protest votes right there.
It's going to be bad today, I guess.
It'll be fine. It's charming. It's charming. Let it be.
It's charming until I have to edit it.
Well, don't edit too much of it out.
Well, like, I won't be able to, and that'll be the problem.
It's perfect. We're featuring Lincoln in this
I'm
episode.
actually going to
He's
go kick him out because this is going to be a problem.
he's still doing it.
While Mason chases off a stray cat, remember to share this podcast with your friends and enemies, and leave a 5-star review for us wherever you are listening. Also, subscribe to Meaning What on Substack, link in the description.
You put him in the gulag, didn't you?
I just chased the other cat off, which I feel bad about, but
Necessary.
yeah, because the other day Lincoln started running his head into the window, and that was not
Not good.
not great. So we're gonna try to avoid that. So what did we do? We watched some Oscar movies this week.
We attempted to watch through all of the Best Picture nominees for the Oscars, and in grand tradition, when we did this the last time, did we get through all of them? No. Was the majority of them watched by me because it's a miserable task and I love misery? Yes.
I have other things I need to do.
Like play Mass Effect.
Well, yeah, that's going to be very important. I have my whole checklist. We're going to go through it. It's a little bit of control, but also, I spend 4 hours a week editing this podcast or whatever. So,
Woo!
woo, pay us.
Please. So the movies the movies nominated that we attempted to watch without being paid were Nora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2. Insert Dune noise. Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked.
What a list. All of these, the very best pictures that were made in 2024. If your favorite movie's not on that list, it's because it sucked.
Obviously.
That's how it works.
I do think it's interesting that it's still the only field where they have expanded it past 5 and have kept it there.
Yeah.
With apparently the express intent of allowing bigger quote unquote movies in right after apparently The Dark Knight was the big controversy in 2009, I think.
Right, because you couldn't have a comic book movie in the best pictures, right?
That was good, but not amazing. I don't know. I was a freshman in high school.
Yeah, I saw it 3 times in the theater, but I'm also a big Batman fan, so
Right.
I think it was the best of the Christian Bale Batman, and I don't think anybody will disagree with me. But there's probably some asshole out there who likes to be a contrarian. But
Shut up.
they probably don't listen to this podcast yet. It's funny the thought that The Dark Knight couldn't be in the best picture list if there were only 5 of them. Like somehow by adding a 6th slot or whatever, then you can have your comic book movies. But we need our 5 Oscar bait films, because it's not like it's the A24 list, right, or anything, right?
The fucking winner was Slumdog Millionaire.
Right, which is Oscar bait. And that
sort of,
that's really
right?
what it is. It's a biopic. It's a moving drama, right? It's the same reason why A Complete Unknown is on here, which we'll talk about. But
we'll get to that shit.
Like they're looking for a very particular kind of movie, and it's funny. It's just always funny to me whenever you have like this list of requirements or reasons why you can't do a thing, and it's because you made up all the rules and they don't work with what you're trying to do.
Right. So, like, the reason we're even fucking doing this is, I think, to me personally, like, there is still some attempt at actually searching for quote unquote the best of the industry in a way that is built specifically about quality. Now, like, this is with like 17 caveats of like, how do you really get a Oscar movie nominated? But because film is a younger art form than other art forms, I feel like it's still attempting to look for good things.
And it's still trying to define itself as well, right?
Yes.
And sometimes they get it right, and sometimes they just don't. And, how many of the Best Picture winners can you remember or even name?
Some. And I can remember the terrible one that no one liked.
Which one was that?
Crash.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I kind of want to watch it. If everyone's saying like this is somehow the most racist and terrible thing ever, and I'm like, oh.
I watched it when it came out, and I don't remember anything about it.
And we couldn't have. Oh, it's because it was too scary to give Brokeback Mountain a win. Gay fucking cowboys.
And only 4 westerns have ever won Best Picture, which is funny for an American film award, right? One of my favorite films of all time, No Country for Old Men, is on that list. Won in 2007.
I think so. Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got through most of this fucking list, but we didn't get to all of them. And a couple of them, we have actual reasons why we didn't get to them.
Right.
Nickel Boys was like kind of the big indie surprise. It was only nominated for mostly for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. So very sparse nominations. It sounds really interesting. It's shot entirely in first-person point of view. It's fucking impossible to get to. It somehow had a limited release thanks to Amazon MGM. Ew, the fact that those two are merged together. But like, I have a life, and I tried to find a schedule to go see it in person. And it was like, in SF, there's 2 screenings a week at like 6 p.m. And you're like, okay. And also, it does not come out on streaming platforms until the end of February. again, but on a very niche one that you have to like get a free trial. Like, so much fucking work, and if it feels indicative of like the lack of access, so therefore the lack of success this movie will have.
Yeah. It's also 2.5 hours long.
Actually, a lot of them were over the 2 hour mark. I was surprised. The ones that I watched recently, and I was like,
I just mean as far as like accessibility and all of that. Like,
yeah.
you know, it is adding on top of that. Movies are getting longer, and there's another conversation to have within that, because it's not necessarily a bad thing, but
They are too long.
if it needs to be that long, it needs to be that long. You know,
But most of the time, doesn't fucking need to be that long.
right? Exactly. Dune has to be as long as it is, but
You're trying to cover so much shit.
it's a 700-page book anyway, so you know, there's a
So
lot to do
dense.
there. Yeah.
Yes. And only one other one that we didn't watch, The Brutalist. And that's because, meaning what stands to say, fuck you for AI.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot. AI is very good for a small number of things, and all those things are repetitive, soulless bullshit that we've built into our daily lives. The Brutalist used AI to make architectural drawings, a thing that human beings have been doing since we started drawing, and also to dress up the set.
No. To dress up the lead two actors Hungarian. They like kept saying like, "Oh, Hungarian is so hard." So that lead editor who is Hungarian like fed into a voice program to clean up any of the Hungarian that was spoken. Allegedly, most of it was Hungarian accented English in the movie, but and then like they kept insisting, but the acting performance is 100% themselves, and the answer is no. Part of your work as an actor is to like, I hate this trope, but like the believability of it is whether or not you can fucking do the language. We'll talk about it. And
Right.
Emilia Perez, some of the Spanish is, oh my god, it's offensively bad.
But the Brutalist also used AI for like some of the architecture and stuff as well. Like,
and that's the fucking point
Right.
of the film.
But if you can't even get architectural drawings in here, you know, it just so horrifically lazy. And the fact that it is listed is offensive.
And it comes back to, oh, it was only made on $10 million. So you didn't want to pay people to do the work.
Right, exactly. You paid Adrian Brody, so
yeah, I bet like a couple mil, at least almost half that budget went to the acting salaries.
Right.
So
we wanted Adrian Brody, which I think is another thing we'll need to talk about here too, is this habit of casting the same 4 people to do everything.
He has a nice nose. Anyways. Aside. Why don't we start with the films that you are covering? So that's A Complete Unknown, Dune. You got a Timothy Sports Chalet doubleheader.
I watched both of the Timothy Chalamet movies that came out this year that are on this list. Somehow Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka or whatever it was not nominated. Did that come out this past year? I think it did.
Yes. Yes.
He could have been on here 3 times, but here we are.
Oh, God.
And so I saw A Complete Unknown a couple of nights ago. I saw Dune Part 2 in theaters. I really, really enjoyed that book. It is exactly the kind of sci-fi that I like. And I liked the first one a lot and thought that this one was great as well. But my God, I am so tired of Timothy Chalamet. I've never liked him. I don't like his face. I don't like how he acts. I don't like the sound of his voice. He is benefited by being in these movies surrounded by people who are infinitely more interesting than he is, which I think is kind of his point. He's just like attractive and
the everyman.
He's not even an everyman, right? He's like a skinny little French alien, but like people love him. So I watched these 2 movies. I think that he's great in Dune because he is exactly who I would want as Paul. He is a whiny, wealthy little shithead who throws a convincing temper tantrum, and it is convincing when he is shitty to everyone around him, and everyone worships him for not really, any clear reason for a little while, and then he goes and does some great stuff, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you're wonderful," and then he starts a holy war. Like that is what I see Timothy Chalamet as. As a fan of Bob Dylan,
Get in there.
I would have loved to have seen somebody who could actually encompass that sort of persona.
Yeah.
I think about the Dylan movie that they did many years ago now, where they had a whole bunch of actors playing Dylan at
Yes.
different points in his life.
Kate Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett's performance was so good.
She's so hot, anyways.
And, the genius of that film, it's been a while since I watched it, but the genius of that film was nobody was trying to be, like, literally be Dylan. They were,
Dylan.
like, trying to get some aspect of him or capture some part of him.
Essence of him, yeah.
And so Chalamet is not a good enough actor to do that. Like his accent was inconsistent. His singing was pretty impressive, but I don't think it was bad enough, right? Like part of Dylan's people complained about how he sang, and rightly so. Like he's singing through his nose, but like that's it. And Chalamet got it too perfect, and then his accent is inconsistent, and like I could nitpick it, but I think that movie it fits right into this perfect Oscar material. It is a biopic about an American musician, and it is a sort of underdog story. It's very much a Walk the Line or Ray. It is trying. You make this movie to get nominated for an Oscar, and there are so many problems with it. It does not treat its women very well. Everyone is set dressing, and you can make an argument that is like how Dylan was approaching it, but
you have the room as a movie to add depth to all of these characters or build out this world better.
Right. Ellie Fanning is great. I have always enjoyed her. She's beautiful in this movie. She plays a fictional version of Susie Rotolo, who is Dylan's girlfriend at the time, and she appears on the cover of The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, which is his second album. It's his first album of original material. And so she plays a fictionalized version of her named Sylvie Russo, who is just a nag. Like she is the cliche, like she's the white blonde girl that works in civil rights stuff in the 1960s, and she wants to have this big career, and then Bob comes along and he's like the guy who's sleeping till noon and is kind of an asshole, but she loves him and she's trying to nag him, and she's a career woman and all this. And she was just so two-dimensional. Ellie Fanning did so well with what she was working with, but there was so little there. And it felt very unfair to this actual woman who is no longer alive. She died in 2011. It sucked. And then to have Joan Baez like be a two-dimensional pseudo villain, like there are problems with Dylan and her's relationship, especially since Dylan and Rotolo were dating when he met Joan Baez and all of this and that. But it's very much like, look at this poor little genius boy. He came out to New York just to meet Woody Guthrie, and then he goes and has this grand adventure, and all the women in his life are just nagging him, and they don't recognize his absolute genius.
They're just getting in the way. We don't really need to talk about, well, like Dune. We can broadly appreciate its film craft.
Dune is a fucking phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
It's amazing what happens when you have a filmmaker adapt material that he actually enjoys and respects understands, right?
And is able to still put his stuff on it, his juice on it.
Gross. People love David Lynch's Dune, rest in peace, because it's so weird, but it misses the mark on, in my humble opinion, it misses the mark on so much of what makes that story so important. I think part of why David Lynch's adaptation of Dune is so beloved is because it is David Lynch, but it suffers from the same thing that the Tim Burton Batman suffer from, where it was like an incredibly unique vision of it made by somebody who did not really care about the source material or have any interest in it.
Right. More interested in their vision and style
Right.
than getting to the core of what this property's about.
And the Dune adaptations are very much in the style of Denis Villeneuve, right? Like they are Denis Villeneuve films, and he has a look and he has a way of creating movies, just like anybody. Like Christopher Nolan has that same sort of vibe. I think Villeneuve's style is a little bit less in the way of the movies that he's making. You can tell a Christopher Nolan film. You can tell a David Lynch film. You can tell a Tim Burton film. And I think that Villeneuve could probably hide a little bit behind his craft a little more. But the thing that I have always loved about him is that he really cares about good, smart sci fi in a way that I don't think happens a lot in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Um,
At all.
right. Even Nolan is so focused on uh, the grandiosity of the things that he's doing.
The gothic drama rather than like
Yeah, and Villeneuve really cares about the minutia in a way that like I think you could easily draw comparisons between the way he does sci-fi and the way that Nolan does sci-fi, and like they both care about like putting people in actual places and having things happen and all that, but and also having like character drama and that sort of thing. But Villeneuve really seems to care about like how people interact with each other and how things work, right? One of the reasons why his Blade Runner sequel works is because it adapts everything from the original film, good, bad, and ugly, and it embraces all of the like problematic tropes that were in 1980s sci-fi and doesn't try to erase them or try to remove them, but instead creates a story around like criticizing that type of sci-fi, which is what makes that movie so genius. And in Dune, we have a similar sort of thing, and it's a very faithful adaptation until it is not. And part two is at the end of it steps away in some pretty dramatic ways from its source material, right? The fact that Chani does not dedicate her entire life to Paul and actually reacts like a real human being would in that moment, and
right.
who feels wronged by what Paul does, and very rightfully so. Those sorts of changes make it work, and I think part two benefits from the fact that it adapted the much more interesting part of the first book. The first half of that book is just people talking, and that's what that movie was. And this is much more exciting to ignite a holy war. But
spoilers.
yeah,
That shit about to get dark.
oh my God, Dune Messiah is gonna be. I can't wait, and I hope that he just stops there, and that'll be our Dune trilogy. But it was interesting to watch these two movies about a petulant young man played by Timothy Chalamet and have one of them really, really work and one of them, it was okay. It made me want to go back and, listen to some Joan Baez and, listen to some more Dave Van Ronk and all of those guys, and to go back and really spend some time with early Bob Dylan and really reflect on it. And as somebody I saw Bob Dylan in concert 15 years ago, and he didn't, I don't think he addressed the crowd at any point. Like his drummer was the one that talked to the crowd. And this man, who was at that point in his 80s, I think, just came out there and just fucking blew everybody away and then left. He played for 2.5 hours straight, made no breaks, no opener, no bullshit. They just played good music, the most searing rendition of All Along the Watchtower that I've ever heard, and then he went away. I think that is the magic of of Dylan. And one last point on that. It is interesting because at the end of the film, like in all biopics, they have little sentences about who went on to do whatever else. And they talk about Dylan and his great career and how he didn't go to his own Nobel Prize ceremony. They talk about Pete Seeger and how he continued advocating for stuff and Joan Baez going on. They don't mention Ellie Fanning's character, presumably because she's partially fictionalized, right? They don't say anything about what ended up happening to Susie Rotolo or point out that she was a different person or anything like that. She's just, and she is a central character. She is throughout the entire film. And that felt very, very, very much like an oversight.
Hollow and empty.
That felt very gross. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, my turn, right? The rest of the episode.
Right.
Okay, so let's cover first the one like adaptation or similar genre of like Oscar bait. And the rest of the movies I watched essentially were the other kind of Oscar bait where they quote unquote have something to say. Very brief touch on Wicked, which so funny, I double checked. A Complete Unknown was like announced with Dylan as the lead. So like that was set in stone as like that is the shape of the project.
You mean Timothy Chalamet as the lead?
Whatever the fuck. Yes. Yeah. He's the lead. This is it. Like this is the whole point of the movie. Wicked, meanwhile, had every actress in Hollywood going through like 14, 16 rounds of auditions. Very funny. Wicked is the most musical to ever musical. I mean,
even more so than Cats. I feel like Cats is the distillation of the musical, right? Like it's written by what's his name?
Andrew Lloyd Webber, and it's literally just based on poems from T.S. Eliot.
I have that book. They're great poems. There's no reason why you should string them together into a narrative. Unless you are on so much cocaine.
Is it just a 3-hour musical of introduction of cats, and then the winning cat gets to commit suicide in a dramatic way? Yes. Fine. Wicked is the second most musical ever. It is based on a terrible, no one likes book that is telling the alternate story of the Wicked Witch of the West.
Full of weird, like, grotesque sexual things, too.
Oh, so many.
Yeah. Isn't it, like, it's really salacious.
Yes. Really salacious and cuckoo bananas. So then the film, the like musical Wicked is about the story, is really the core and the heart of it, is about the Wicked Witch of the West and Glinda the Good Witch and their relationship. And especially this is part 1. Oh my God, they're doing 2 parts, Act 1 and Act 2, which like everyone is bracing for the worst for Act 2 because Act 2 of the musical is generally regarded as like it's complete doo-doo, the worst songs until the end.
The musical is only a couple hours long, right? Like if you take the intermission out, you have a feature-length film. So how do you split?
They apparently stuffed back in more stuff from the book. Basically,
good. Things that they left out
for reasons
from the very successful thing that this is actually based on. Okay, got it.
Yeah. To like quote unquote give characters more context, but you're like, this is really about 2 women, right? So like, why are we doing anything else than that? The movie is fine. Everyone's complaints about it visually correct, just like the color grading so bad. Like going for realism. Mm-hmm. Why the fuck are we going for realism in a Wizard of Oz related material? The acting from the 2 female leads is much better than the film itself. And part of that has to do with like I didn't really think about it. Broadway has very specific rules about how far you're allowed to go off book. You're not allowed to go off book at all. Mm-hmm. One of the most famous Elphabas, in like one of her final performances, went for a riff that she got fined for. You like cannot go off book, but they have more room in this movie to go off book and take more risks and do some rewrites of the songs, and like most of it works. The acting is great. Both of them are nominated. They both can sing very well. We'll talk about you could complain about Ariana Grande attempting to sing more operatically. Weird technique, and you're like, why are you doing that with your jaw? Anyways, like literally, like, oh, who told you that? You had a voice teacher. Fire them. And I love her. I'm a faggot in that way.
I wonder it is just like, imagine being Ariana Grande's voice teacher. You know, like
How
you,
much are you? Yeah, how much can you change that?
right? You can't say, "Hey, you can't do that," right? How that conversation would go would be like, "Well, here's another way that you could do this," and she'd be like, "No," or whatever.
No,
Yeah,
I mean she has Broadway chops, and like her earlier singing demonstrates less of her isms,
I just
the
mean
bad ones.
she's
Yeah,
at a point where you don't get to make her better. You know,
or
like,
change how she sings
right,
that
this is
much.
who she is now because she's famous and and all of that. So I that is not a job that I would ever want.
Yeah, and you know this is clearly a movie that is put in here because the expanded field to 10.
Yeah.
Um, we'll move on from it. Great.
Hey,
That's all I
was
have to say.
Cats nominated in 2020? That feels like a very 2020 moment.
No, it was derided as terrible. Literally, remember? Oh, I
No, I
don't know if you
remember.
remember the re-releases of it because they had so many physical mistakes.
Mhm.
The Uncanny Valley, the one image of like Grisabella, who's supposed to be the heart of this film, Jennifer Hudson. Oh my god.
So everybody should read T.S. Eliot's book of cat poems and do a bunch of cocaine. See if you end up in the same place.
Yeah, start dancing. And then female empowerment theme. I guess there are three films here. Well, two films here explicitly about like womanhood in some way, and I think it's interesting to like compare and contrast them a little bit. Honora and The Substance. Honora, the TLDR, is a sex worker. It's marketed as a love story. It's not really a love story. It's a sex worker who happens to like fall in love with a Russian oligarch's son, and then in his like, this is my moment to be young and free because I can do whatever the fuck I want. I'm gonna marry her, and then intense fallout because it becomes this weird caper because the Russian oligarch parents hear about this shit and they have to chase after him and he like runs away. So like the second half of the movie becomes like a silly little caper, like, can we find him?
Right.
Um
Sounds like a Sean Baker film.
yes. And like so the complaints about the movie are that Nora doesn't have a lot of interiority. And I think part of that is because the journey of the movie is her finding her interiority.
Mhm.
She's just trying to fucking make ends meet. She's doing what she can do, and she has to search for it in these like really ridiculous circumstances. And the final scene is a pretty heartbreaking, like splashy but well crafted way to kind of get to the heart of the argument. Basically, Igor, who is like one of the oligarch's handlers, is incredibly sympathetic to her through all of this, and he takes her home at the very end after they've like it's all worn off, and her only way to thank him is to make sexual advances towards him, and then she breaks down. And that's how the movie ends.
Did you see Red Rocket? Sean Baker's
No, but
film before this.
yeah. It's interesting he does a lot of movies about sex workers.
And it's interesting to hear you describe it this way because the sex worker in Red Rocket is like a conventionally attractive white man who is similarly shallow in the way that you describe and runs into similar issues. And so hearing it, like if I'd only heard Honora, it would be like, maybe that feels kind of gross. But like having seen that Sean Baker can have complexity,
Shallow sex worker with depth.
right?
Yeah.
And also that like some of that complexity comes out of these initially shallow characters, right? Like Red Rocket,
Yeah.
the main guy is like a total cliche of the porn star, and I don't remember him really having any growth at all, but that's really the point of the film. And all of the women around him just show themselves time and time again how much better they are than he is, including the minor that he's flirting with or whatever. So it's interesting to
Yeah.
hear that all laid out. It feels very much like he has a type of movie.
Yeah. And like somewhat of its success is that it doesn't neatly fit into a genre.
Right.
It is somewhere between like it actually genuinely flits somewhere between a rom-com and something a little more serious, but it is successful in it because like the film works in shades and ambiguity. And so yeah, I think those complaints miss the point of like the shallowness is part of the character
Right.
shallowness. And the movie is a little bit an exploration also on like Russian diaspora and culture, which is interesting, and like you kind of fall into it.
Yeah.
So that's good. And Mikey Madison is this absolute like crown jewel of the movie, and she has the Best Actress nomination. Great for her. So, in contrast with the much more general public opinion lauded the substance. If you haven't heard of the conceit of it, I don't know if you've had a pulse in the last like 9 months. Yada yada yada. You inject yourself with a substance to make like another hotter, quote unquote, hotter, younger, better version of you, but you have to flip back and forth with it, and like what comes of it. So, just watched it last night, and there's like there's aspects of body horror inevitably, like because things go wrong. The weakest point of the film, ironically, is its like lack of ability to ground itself in what kind of genre and tone it's going for. Especially in the first chunk of the movie, there's so much like blaringly obvious, lazy, like metaphor setting. Everything is ominous. Everything is this like siren call. Everything is like cut to a fly drowning in a glass of wine, and you're like, oh, we know what the fuck's going on. Okay, we get it. We get it. We get it. It's so heavy and like hand holding you and explaining everything to you in just the most like goo goo gaga way. It really undercuts what it can be doing. And it goes for camp often, but like it doesn't consistently stick to it. It can't tell if it wants to be a horror film or a camp film or like an actual genuine hybrid of the two.
Right.
It just kind of flops between the two. And because there's so much artifice poorly done in a way that is not like exploring that artifice meaningly, right? The whole point is this movie is about woman's body image, but it doesn't explore in any depth. There's literally no depth to Demi Moore's character. She is literally just a cipher for all of your insecurities about body image. So therefore her performance is like, there are a couple of moments where you get to like see a person actually handle or like work through a body images thing, but because it's so heavy about this very unsubtle like this bad, like she has a lot of problems as things get worse of like binge eating, which her hotter self loathes, but you're like, but that's all it says, food bad,
Right.
and you're like, okay. And just like on a film craft level, I found it very like not have a grasp of its own material very well. Concept great, execution ugh.
Could say the same about A Complete Unknown.
Just two very different like movies, but essentially
Concept
that.
great, execution meh. Didn't really think any of this through, did we?
Yeah, less credit for A Complete Unknown because that's the concept is American music history,
right?
Like it existed,
right? And one of maybe one of the most important moments in
American folk music,
in the history
American
of American folk music, the history of American music, definitely.
Yeah, period.
Like the moment Dylan went electric was, earth shattering. But let's tell it in the least interesting way possible. Can we talk about a movie that we both saw?
Yes.
Which was Conclave, which I don't know was one of the best movies of last year, but was a excellent movie full of excellent people doing excellent things. It was a classically good 2-hour drama.
Adult made drama.
Right. It was the most movie. It really, you said it. It has this sort of what is now almost antiquated sensibility to it of like a 90s or early 2000s drama. It is just people talking in rooms. It's the story of the conclave of cardinals in the Vatican electing a new pope. And it follows the dean who is leading the conclave as he tries to manage all of these cardinals and all of the infighting and try to make sure that the right person for the future of the church gets the position rather than someone else. It has an all-star cast.
Oh, Rafe Fiennes. Isabella Rossellini. Oh my fucking god.
Plus a delightfully evil John Lithgow and Stanley Tucci being Stanley Tucci and yeah.
And more.
Yeah. And it is it's just a movie. It's a good drama. I'm not Catholic, so none of that shit means anything to me. It has some big swings and makes some wild choices about, setting and things to sort of raise the stakes and there's a weird subplot of terrorist attacks that's never really explored fully and
It's a Deus Machina.
100%.
Yeah.
But just a good movie. Ray Fiennes is amazing. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's just such a like beautifully layered performance that really is the like weight of the film. Isabella Rossellini is fantastic in her like 5 minutes.
One of the strokes of genius was she plays an almost masculine character. She has like this sense of order and of being put together, and she is strict and unshakable and has this sense of authority. And then that is played against Ray Fiennes being almost effeminate and incredibly emotional and just like on the verge of tears at all times.
The entire fucking film.
Which is just beautiful. It's beautifully done. And it's a movie about a bunch of old men bickering in very not masculine ways, which is feeds into the ultimate twist that we won't get into here in case you want to see it. But like, I think it has some potential. I'm glad that it was made, and some of its messaging I think is really actually genuinely important just because it is there. It's one of those movies that I'm happy that it exists because it exists. And that the people who made it so well. And I am hoping that it opens the door for
more of this stuff again.
More of this stuff and more similarly complex or even more complex stories around similar themes.
The success of it is its specificity of its scale.
Yeah.
It is 2 hours really focused on a very specific thing, and it can and does explore other things, but the focus of it and the fact it's not, like compared to The Substance, trying to say something so fiercely is why it therefore can tell you more.
I have two vibes, right? I want my movie to either be utterly massive,
Right. Dune.
Or I want it to be so laser focused and claustrophobic that it's like just people in a room, like Conclave. I think about one of my favorite movies, and I need to watch it again, was Locke. It was a great A24 film starring Tom Hardy. That's a chamber play. It's just him in a car for an hour and a half making phone calls. And it is an excellent drama. It has a great hook, and the performances on the other end of the line are really well done. But the movie itself is just Tom Hardy with a cold driving a BMW trying to figure out where he's going to go, if he's going to take the left fork or the right fork. I love that shit. Right? So if you're not going to make the biggest movie ever, right?
Make the smallest one.
I need a bunch of old men bickering with each other in a room.
And like we discussed off filming, the twist is random, and like the film necessitates a twist, great, especially in the context of 2024. But that twist is okay, sure,
I'm happy that the twist is there because of what it touches on.
right.
And like we talked about, the problem with it is that it could literally be anything.
You could literally plug in like
And
yeah,
it's hinted at throughout, but it is so vague, and there are so many other more important things going on that you
right.
like when it finally gets to it. It is also so late in the movie that the reveal happens that there's no time to really sit with it or reflect
Explore it.
on it or explore it. It is, and everything around it is just done. Right. The
Yep.
twist comes out, and maybe this is realistic in the way that it is, but the twist happens at the point that nothing could be done about it. So it almost doesn't matter, right? There are no stakes, which is fascinating as well. And that is the thing that I'm hoping that the success of this movie gives people permission to do in exploring similar things and taking similar issues and similar twists and putting them into movies where it carries some weight and
Yes.
yeah.
All right. Two more films. I think we'll start with the the worst one first, and then we can end on a good note. Okay. Holy motherfucking shit. Emilia Perez. Like, it's hard not to have been colored by the press and the bad press around it, but like it absolutely informs what happens in the film.
How can you tell people why this is such a bad movie? Right?
Yes.
A little bit
Yes.
about like
On the surface level, even before we
yeah.
get to the actual film itself, it is based on an opera libretto that the director wrote. It is essentially about a Mexican drug cartel leader who transitions and kind of like it's supposed to allegedly be about that story. Problem is, the French ass director said he didn't need to research about Mexican culture or about trans culture at all. He said it'd be fine. The movie ends up getting filmed in France, and everyone on the production end is French. On top of that, we were all like, "Oh, look, a trans woman nominated for Best Actress." Oh God, there's so many tweets about her being aggressively homophobic, racist, and especially Islamophobic. Huh? Okay. And kind of chilling that Netflix immediately then dropped her. She's not. She gets no more paid press. She doesn't get paid to show up to any of these award shows. Like, they dropped her like so fast, but we can't, drop any other evil man.
Well, we are currently erasing trans people from existence, so
So, right, and that's the problem. This film like has so many Oscar noms and like conversation around it because it is a trans movie made for cis people.
right.
So that is the like biggest fucking problem about it. Now, when you get into the actual fucking film itself, first of all, I am a musical apologist. I love musicals. They are a great art form. This is the worst. This is attempting to ruin musicals for everyone.
They're
It is a
bad.
musical.
They're bad.
Yes.
Musicals are bad. I'm sorry, but now you are
But
seeing. This is how I feel about every musical that isn't made by Mel Brooks.
yes. First of all, it's fascinating that it's an opera libretto originally. Every single song is just a recitative, aka the part where the characters are literally speaking to each other really quickly and like, let's cover and move on the plot points. There is no like aria or big song that's like this is a beautifully sung reflection of my feelings. Also, basically no one in the film can sing. Sorry, Selena Gomez. Basically no one in the film can sing.
I didn't know she was in this.
Yeah, she plays the drug cartel leader's wife. We'll get to it. So, like, that's my pet peeve. Why aren't you hiring people who can sing? Especially when your lead is a relative unknown. You can find a trans woman who can sing. Are you fucking kidding me?
Maybe not in France. Maybe this is what we're learning.
She's Spanish.
Oh, well.
Right, remember, everyone is Mexican except on the production side.
Mm-hmm. Which is also an interesting, like, why would you sign up for this? No matter how badly you need money, there comes that time. Like, I understand, like, you have the opportunity for a big break or whatever, but, like, come on. Like, there's no way that you could look at this project and be like, oh no, this is a good way to spend my time. This is how I want my career to be happening.
Oh, well, well, I think any opportunity is a good opportunity, right?
And yeah, and I get that, and is probably at the end of the day really the ultimate issue here. But have some fucking dignity. It's all I'm
Okay,
saying.
I have to explain the arc of the movie
Mhm.
just so you can like realize how regressive it is. It is about a terrible drug cartel leader who has done many wrongs, hires a young, plucky lawyer played by Zoe Saldana to arrange his transition. Her, I guess, her transition into being a woman. That happens. Cuts to 4 years later, and part of the transition was that Amelia Perez sends away the wife and kids to protect them, dies, emerges as Amelia Perez. We don't know anything about the drug cartel guy is gone. When the movie comes back, it essentially ends with Amelia Perez dying in a car crash that bursts into flames, and her fault because she's trying to do good as a woman now, like literally like saving missing people, is because she didn't out herself to her wife fast enough. That is essentially the plot of the movie is trans women are liars and you will be punished for it. You will be punished for your previous sins. The film craft is so bad. Like, modern movies have a problem with like everything being so dark, but
Right.
literally everything that is bad is in dark lighting, and everything that's good as a woman is in light lighting. Wow.
Why would
Um
you have subtlety? Subtlety is overrated.
for the fact that two of these songs are nominated for best song is like the songs are so bad, and the dancing doesn't make sense. And I think when I finally like pulled out why it was extra bad, it was the songs and the dancing are by French people. This movie is about Mexican culture and makes no attempt to demonstrate an understanding of Mexican culture or Mexican music or dance. And you're like, so what the fuck are we doing here? Why is the choreography Hamilton? It's literally Hamilton.
It has a very old Hollywood sort of feel to it. A movie made by people who are not part of the community
Right.
that they're making a movie about. This is better in that they're not hiring a bunch of Italians to play Native Americans, but there's still that almost classic Hollywood sense to, like, let's make a movie that is so disrespectful and so deeply misunderstands its source material that it can't escape that part of it, right? Like,
Nope.
no matter what, even if it's good, even if it was good, right? It wouldn't be able to get out of the orbit of the fact that it is problematic on its face, and nobody at any point in making it seemed to really care about that.
Absolutely not. What else is terrible about it? I mean, there's so many things function bad. Selena Gomez's Spanish is so bad in it. It like got made fun of endlessly, but the Spanish is really bad. You're like, oof. I get why you hired her, but oof. Um,
But it won the jury prize at the Canes for
uh,
its female ensemble.
one of the songs, as Zoe Saldana is trying to research, she goes to Thailand to ask a surgeon in this like room filled with white lab coats. Is it man to woman or woman to man? Man to woman. So then cut to a swirling, multicolored names of various cities around the world. And you're like, what was the point of that? That was to demonstrate that you traveled around the world to look for options. Of course, in the end, she chooses an Israeli doctor in Tel Aviv. Like, just the politics of this movie are just.
Is that how it won 4 Golden Globes?
No, it won because it's telling an important story, and because It also like talks about the plight of missing and killed people in Mexico, but in like such a naggy, shallow way of just saying Mexico's a shithole, essentially.
Right. The same story that outsiders have been telling about Mexico since it came into existence.
It is bad on every regard, and also so transphobic. It's mind-boggling.
It is a really excellent example, and I'm bringing up the awards and stuff that it won for this purpose. It is a good example of a movie that is lauded by critics who don't seem to understand what regular human beings are, right? And not celebrated by the people that presumably it's about, right? And that is such a common thing in filmmaking and in the Oscars, right? It is almost this perfect example of the very thing that is wrong with this entire experiment of awarding the cream of the crop in Western filmmaking.
And we have to say thanks to the Mexican filmmakers who are all trans, who made a essentially protest film in comparison to it called Johannes Sacre Bleu. They are all dressed as mimes the entire time. I mean, the only way to respond to it.
The critics love this movie, and
yes, that was the most mind-boggling thing about it to me. All the big ones. All the like Hollywood bigwigs, and you're just like, it's partially or definitely thanks to Netflix's heavy marketing.
And goddammit, Denis Villeneuve cited it as one of his favorite films of 2020.
Yes.
So
what are they like? That is what I'm baffled. Like, okay, maybe you just know nothing about trans people. Like, the film craft of it is not good.
It makes you wonder, right? Like, what do the people that are part of that world,
see in it?
What do they see that we don't?
Jack shit. I don't get it.
Well,
like, anyways, am I a unbiased person to talk about this film? No, but fuck you.
I think really what it illustrates is that we still don't know how to talk about or represent trans people anywhere in culture, and we don't know how to talk about or represent Hispanic and Latino people in
Hollywood. Is especially terrible about that. What the fuck?
And that will love anything done by a French filmmaker. So,
like even a wet stinking turd, which is so funny. Then we get to contrast it to something they absolutely got right. I'm Still Here is amazing, but also a very like far shot movie. Like it was a huge surprise that it got the best Oscar nom, and the lead actress got the nom because she was actually excellent. And I'm Still Here is like about similar things. It is literally about Eunice Paiva, who is a mother of a family of 5, and her husband is a former congressman in Brazil. In the backdrop of a lot of political unrest, he gets forcibly taken away by the military, and then she spends the rest of her life kind of working through the struggles of raising a family, and also how she advocates to honor her husband's memory. And it is so much more successful about talking about political unrest and people being lost and bad governments, because it is such a narrow focus and scale of a movie. It's not a perfect movie. The pacing is a little weird, but I think its biggest success is that I could not tell that it was based on the youngest son in the family's autobiography or like memoir about the situation. Like, it does not stink of a memoir or too many opinions about everything. It is about the process of grieving. It is the process of how do you manage to tell your children just enough about the situation, and her choice is to like not tell the younger children in the family about the situation. The acting is beautiful and subtle. It chooses to film the scenes as vignettes, which really works. The pacing of the movie is really slow, but to me, it functionally works as like an exploration of the mundanity of like life fucking sucking, and how you have to get through it. And the lead actress performance by Fernanda Torres is just like great acting, subtlety, shades, and yeah, I want it to win everything if it can. But the fact it's probably going to at least lose Best Foreign Language Film to the French representative Emilia Perez. God.
May go down in history as one of the biggest.
If Emilia Perez wins one of the big awards, oh my God. I mean, it's not winning Best Actress anymore because she's dug her own grave by accident. Oops. You should watch that one.
No, I don't think I need to.
No. Oh, no. I'm still here.
Oh,
you should watch
yeah.
it.
Yeah, it is on my list. I think once it's out of theaters, I'm gonna.
Yeah, on somewhere. It's actually great cinema.
So, what's our takeaway with all of this? There's a real question about whether or not the Oscars represents the general viewer in any way, and I think that there was a time where it felt a little bit more like maybe it did. We still talk about Forrest Gump, even though it's a terrible movie, but like, it was a cultural touchstone. And there are films from earlier in the Academy's history that we still hold up as great examples, and there are plenty that we've forgotten about. But in a time when anyone can make a movie, theoretically,
Right.
and in a time when the industry is so split between your big budget, massive studio slop that is all turning into the same thing, and your indie art house, which is also not really that independent anymore and going the way of indie music,
Yep.
and in a world where Neon and A24 are becoming big names in the industry, and where a film can be entered in the Criterion Collection the year that it comes out.
Bullshit. And the like vaguely saddest, like, oh yeah, non-American films are good too, maybe.
Right.
Beyond the foreign film category.
What is the value in paying any attention at all to the Academy Awards? Because I don't think there is one.
Right. It's really more a reflection of the film industry itself and what they think of itself.
Yeah.
Which is why so many films that are about itself succeed.
Right.
I think it functions like a Pitchfork Best Albums of the Year list where you get to pick through and hopefully see something that you missed because someone thought it was important enough to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was kind of a miserable exercise, right? To sit through all of that slop. But getting to see like one or two great films that maybe I just wouldn't have taken the time out of my day to actually go see, but because they get, I'd say maybe 2 out of the 10 choices right. That's better than nothing, right? There was no way I would have had easy access to see I'm Still Here if it wasn't for the Oscar noms. It was actually like in a bunch of theaters.
It is nice to be reminded that there are so many different films still happening and that not everything is the Marvel movie of the week or whatever.
Yeah, and this is just one easily accessible way to do so.
Yeah.
One day we're going to be media titans and we'll get invited to watch Con. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd do that.
Especially the funniest thing about Con is right there always talk about how long the standing ovation is at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's like it's only 3 minutes, I'm like, that sounds good. They're like, that means the film is utter garbage and you need to kill yourself. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
I want to have the opportunity to walk out of a standing ovation because it's taking too long.
Yes, but it's us.
Right.
Really important, meaning what podcasters saying how much we hate the film.
Right. Or to be completely ignored by it and, But I'll feel good for having done so.
Duh. We're walking out.
I'm going to go to Taco Bell. I don't have time for this.
Yeah, if we had to go see Emilia Perez, I would like make a scene halfway through just to walk out, just to be like...
Yeah. But to be fair, if I was invited and then I read about the movie, I would not go to see it. You know?
Yeah, you
like,
go, oof,
I'm
duh.
I'm 34.
Well,
I am beyond the point in my life where I'm gonna like.
Well, you saw the word musical and you left.
Well, there's that too, but also, like paying attention to the reality of the film.
I mean, also, maybe this is a musical that you wouldn't hate. I don't know. Tilda Swinton in a apocalyptic musical film?
I don't
A
like.
neon release?
I don't like the format. I don't like the format of the musical. I just don't. I think it's dumb.
Hey, but it's from the trailer of it, it's literally a character drama in a room.
I can't take it seriously.
I don't think you have to.
I hate it. Respect my choices. Stop trying to change me.
I mean, that's why you shouldn't watch Amelia Perez, because literally every time they croaked to sing, I was like,
Right. So I'm going to make the decision as an adult to not watch this movie, and that's going to be okay. I'm at the point in my life where I am deciding that, you know what? I'm just never going to get to that TV show. I'm never going to watch that movie. And that's okay. And we're
many.
okay. Yeah.
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 Fuck AI.
Pirate Metallica.
I thought it was high time he took the stage at Folk City, so I want you to give a warm welcome to Bob Dylan.
Thanks, folks. Yeah, thanks, Pete. That's a lot to live up to.
Listen, I gave.
It's no Sam Studios.
Well, actually.
Did I stutter?